All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, something that I frequently cannot get over in this campaign is how patently obvious the path to victory for both Joe Biden and Donald Trump is. Promise big new programs which will provide working class Americans certainty, you will win big time. But at this point, I've accepted that is not going to happen. Instead, both candidates will work to win over voters already engaged in the political system and engage in a brutal tug of war over upper middle class white suburbanites. The problem I have with this strategy for the Trump campaign is that ultimately it's a losing one. And yesterday we got literally reams of polling data to support this. The two groups that we must focus on who are already in the existing electorate. Those are white suburban voters with a 4-year college degree and older voters age 65 or above. Now, Trump did not win the college-educated white vote last time around, but he didn't exactly get destroyed either. The voting share, according to Pew Research polling after the election, was 55% Clinton, 38% Trump. Now, among voters over age 65, Trump got 53% of the vote compared to Hillary's 44%. Well, this time around, things are not going nearly in the same direction. Trump, in the latest high-quality Quinnipiac poll, is getting 32% of the college-educated white vote to Biden's 63%. So this is a big problem, as it shows not only has Trump's support amongst this group dropped 6 points, but that Biden is running 8 points over Hillary in this coveted white suburbanite demographic. Now, those voters are overwhelmingly more likely to have incomes in the upper quintiles. They're more likely to be culturally liberal, and to the extent that they're conservative at all, it's on tax policy. Now, among boomer voters over age 65, it's a similar story. Trump is running 46 to Biden's 50. That's a significant deficit, which, coupled with the white suburbanite drop-off, is critical to remaking the coalition that edged him into the White House. Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona. It wasn't just white working-class voters that put him in the Oval Office. It was a supporting cast of boomers, some college-educated whites, and more. And here's the thing. If the Trump campaign wants to play this white suburbanite card and older voter game, the tactic is dramatically simple. It doesn't have anything to do with calling Joe Biden a Trojan horse for the radical left. It actually barely has to do with Joe Biden. It has to do with one thing: coronavirus alone, and his messaging on that crisis. Let me explain. With some assistance from the latest Politico Morning Consult poll, Morning Consult asked voters, generally speaking, what would you say you're more concerned about? The economic impact of coronavirus, including the impact of the stock market and increased unemployment, or the public health impact? 59% of voters said that the public health impact, and critically, among boomer voters, that number was 72%, 13% higher than the average of all voters. Among voters with a college degree, it was 60%. And yet, what has Trump done instead? Literally, as I was writing this, he tweeted, quote, "The Dow Jones Industrial just closed above 29,000. You are so lucky to have me as your president. With Joe Biden, it would crash." Now, let's leave aside the boomer emoji placement there and also recall a critical advisor that the Trump administration has brought into its fore in recent days. A new top medical advisor to the president has been internally pushing a herd immunity strategy, which essentially says lift all restrictions, let the virus infect a critical mass of people to the point where we no longer have to worry about it. Look, maybe subscribe to that theory. I don't blame you if you do, given how terrible things have gone. But from a purely political perspective, that is a complete disaster. Politico polled this very question, asking whether Americans should stop social distancing to stimulate the economy, even if it means more spread. Only 18% of voters agreed with that statement. Among boomer voters, it was 13%, with a full 74% of all voters who said that social distancing was important regardless of economic impact. There's more to back that up. Another question found that 62% of all voters care more about the spread of coronavirus than they do about the economy. And you might say, but Saagar, the election is still 2 months away. Maybe coronavirus won't be the top issue on voters' minds come election day. I'm willing to concede that is technically possible. But the truth is that the Trump campaign has been saying that here on this show for months, and there is little evidence that it is true. And more importantly, Americans do not feel that it is true. In fact, they're getting straight up apocalyptic about the virus. Morning Consult showed that a plurality of all voters at 42% said that they expect coronavirus will continue to dramatically impact their life more than 6 months from now. And the latest Reuters Ipsos poll found the exact same thing. Nearly 80% of all voters say they remain concerned about the coronavirus as their top issue that they will vote on. So look, if you want to win older voters back and white suburbanites, make them feel that you take the virus more seriously than the economy. That's it. It's simple. And what's maddening is you could win all the people by taking the coronavirus seriously, and then you could win millions of working class Black and Latino voters who feel completely rejected by the current Democratic Party and are supporting Trump in higher numbers this time around than before 2016. That's the beauty of national populism in the age of coronavirus. It would solve all electoral problems for Trump and the Republican Party. But as usual, a slavish commitment to Wall Street, tax cuts for the sake of them, and an economic ideology that does not work for the majority of American voters will doom Trump at the ballot box to a guy like Joe Biden. And it's the path not taken, and it's the most obvious path in the world. So it's kind of amazing, right? When you look at these polls and you're like, wow, okay, so especially among the boomer voters, 72% say that coronavirus is more important than, and they specifically ask stock market. So it's like, okay, voters do not care about the stock market. Not a surprise, given that most of them don't own stock. Shocker.
Right.
But that's the thing is, the messaging on this has just been so disconnected from reality. I started to see this with Trump after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, where he'd go around and be like, have you guys looked at your 401k recently?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? Most people don't even have 401k. What is it, like 16% of the U.S. population has a 401k? Like, what are you saying? This is not something anybody can relate to in any way.
And dude, the 401k crowd, they're not into you.
Yeah, they don't even
They're not going to be into you. Like, they've moved on.
Maddening.
The thing that was most revealing to me in the stats was the number that said they expected a second wave.
Yeah.
And the number that said they fully expected 6 months from now that they would still be dealing with this crisis. Because what does that tell you? That tells you that, look, we've been wondering if things might change in the fall and the numbers have been kind of going down or at least stabilizing. And if that trend continues and you get it under control, maybe do things look a lot different for Trump? And what those numbers tell you is no, because no one has any confidence that even if things do actually calm down and virus numbers come down precipitously, that they are going to still be safe. Everyone expects a second wave, and I expect a second wave. I mean, not that you can guarantee these things, but as you've been talking about and we've been talking about here, you look what's happening as colleges reopen.
They're all shutting down.
They're all having to shut down. As people go back indoors and are forced indoors because of the cooling weather, virus, of course, spreads easier in cool weather. Look, it's a really challenging situation. And so the fact that voters really get that and understand that tells you that you can't change the channel on this. You can't throw up some shiny distraction the way that in 2016 he was able to run on the issues he wanted to run on. And Hillary basically seeded the field and said, okay, we're going to make it about you. And that allowed him to define what that race was ultimately about. And that's part of how he was able to win. You're not going to be able to do that this time. You have to deal with this landscape as it exists because this one issue is impacting every single aspect of people's lives from the time they get up to in the morning till the time they don't drop their kids off at school or put them on the school bus.
That's exactly it.
Till the time they go to bed at night and prepare themselves to repeat it the next day.
It's the number one issue. It's the only issue. It's the majority issue for all Americans. It literally is one of the only things that unites people, and they don't talk about it that much. And the worst part is they're actually on the wrong side. Every time that you talk about the economy and we have to get people back to work and all that, they feel that you're devaluing their life, or boomer voters in particular, or they're devaluing what they take more seriously. They're like, we want to feel safe. That's it. And at this point, a lot of the credibility from the White House and more from March and February, from those disastrous months, has basically been shot. And so all you can really do at this point is say, we're going to take it seriously, we're going to rebuild America, we're going to keep everybody in, we've got national plans and all this, but
look,
you don't
hear that. The eviction moratorium was a good step.
It was a fantastic step, but that is, look, shot, once every 13 days, you hear something from the administration. They should continue doing those coronavirus briefings from the White House with the doctors and on school reopening. This is how many schools have reopened. This is what the caseload is. Here's our plan in order to go back. Here's our national plan region by region. Have the governors come in. That's actually what Americans want to see. And at this point, the Biden ads are so simple. He's got the riot stuff, but that's not really what he's leading with in many of these battlegrounds. It's always the same thing. I'm Joe Biden and I've got a plan for coronavirus. His wife was out yesterday with a video of some kids at a Taco Bell trying to do their homework because they don't have Wi-Fi at home. And she was like, those kids will not be crying in a Joe Biden's America. Brutally effective. I don't know if it's true. I doubt it's true, frankly. I think at this point the virus is so shot that we're in this thing for a long time. But it's a great message because if you're fed up with what's going on, you got a very convenient target to blame. Americans blame their president in a time of crisis. You can ask George W. Bush, right?
My 7-year-old can recite that Joe Biden ad because they play it so much before his little gamer videos that he watches on YouTube. But it is actually, it's so basic that it's remarkable that, the Trump campaign isn't doing something similar. It's just literally, I have a plan. Here's what it is. 4 different steps. There you go. And it's not rocket science. And I feel like the RNC kind of says it all because they had a lot of messaging about we're taking this seriously and we're going to get it under control and here's the progress we've made. And then you undo it all by having this mass audience without masks on for the president's speech. And that visual says so much more about how they actually are dealing with it and actually how seriously they're taking about it than any of the words over the several nights of the
There's just no reason to do that. And it's like I said, this is the easy part. This is just how you win with the boomers and the white suburbanites, right? Mm-hmm. You don't even need to win them. You just need to win a critical mass. And then, as far as I can tell, he's held on to most of the non-college educated whites that he won in 2016. He could easily win again, just again upon that same strategy. But you don't have to you could do that and win. As we've seen, 7% more support amongst Latino voters. I think it's at 11% nationally amongst black voters, with more than Mitt Romney got, more than George W. Bush got.
Yep.
So it's very, you can tick those numbers up. If you just win as a Republican 15% of the black vote, you actually rewrite the entire electoral map. A lot of people don't understand that. Same with the Latino vote. You can, just 15% increase year over year, you change everything. Arizona, even California becomes more tight. It's these types of things that they're not looking at, and they have such an easy opportunity. They could win the way that they did last time, or they could win even bigger, but they've chosen to go completely the opposite way instead, and I blame ideology for all of it.
I think that is all correct. And we'll have more Rising for you after this.